Life will hit you harder than any enemy you've ever faced. But here's the secret. It's not the blow that breaks you, it's your reaction. And when you master the art of staying calm, you become untouchable. Today I'm going to show you the Stoic way to do exactly that. When life comes at you with full force, the first instinct most people have is to grab everything in sight, try to control every moving part, and desperately fight against what's already happening. But the harder you try to control the uncontrollable, the faster you burn out. I learned this the hard way. There were times when I thought I could outthink every problem, fix every broken relationship, and plan my way out of every storm. And you know what happened? I ended up exhausted, angry, and still at the mercy of forces I had zero power over. That's when the truth hit me. There's a very clear line between what's in your control and what isn't. And the moment you stop pouring your energy into the wrong side of that line, you unlock a level of peace most people will never know. Think about it. You can't control the weather. You can't control traffic. You can't control whether someone treats you with kindness or disrespects you. You can't control if the company you work for suddenly decides to restructure and cut jobs. You can't control if someone you love gets sick, but you can control your response to all of it. That's where the Stoic mindset starts to transform you, by teaching you to stop wrestling with reality and start mastering your reaction to it. Here's the thing. Every time you fight something you can't change, you're actually giving it more power over you. You hand over your peace, your focus, your emotional balance to something that doesn't even care. It's like being in quicksand. The more you struggle against it, the deeper you sink. But the second you stop wasting energy on the struggle, you free up your strength to focus on what you can influence. When I was younger, I used to take things so personally. If someone criticized me, I'd replay their words in my head for days. If plans fell apart, I'd stew over every what if and if only I could think of. I thought that by obsessing over it, I could somehow rewrite what had already happened. But I wasn't rewriting anything. I was just chaining myself to it. The Stoics would call this a living in disturbance, and disturbance only grows when you argue with reality. The breakthrough comes when you realize that not everything requires your interference. If someone cuts you off in traffic, that's on them. If your flight is delayed, that's not your fault. If the stock market dips, you didn't cause it. And in those moments, you have a choice. Either let those events hijack your emotional state or choose to protect your mind from unnecessary chaos. Imagine your mind as a fortress. The walls are your boundaries, and inside is your peace, your focus, your sense of direction. When something you can't control comes knocking, a storm, an insult, a twist of fate, you decide whether to open the gate. Most people throw them wide open without thinking, letting every negative force rush in and wreak havoc. But you don't have to. You can keep the gate shut. You can look at that problem and say, this is outside my control, so it doesn't get to live rent-free in my head. Now, I'm not saying you just sit back and do nothing. Stoicism isn't about being passive, it's about being precise. You pour your effort into the parts of life where your actions matter. You can't control the weather, but you can bring an umbrella. You can't control if your boss is in a bad mood, but you can control the quality of your work. You can't control if the market dips, but you can control your spending habits and investments. That's the power, moving from a reactive mindset to a proactive one. One of the best exercises I've learned from this principle is something simple you can do every single day. When you're faced with a challenge, literally ask yourself, is this inside my control or outside it? If it's inside, act on it. If it's outside, release it. And I mean really release it. Don't half let go and keep replaying it in your head. That mental discipline takes practice, but every time you do it, you're reclaiming your energy for something that actually matters. The truth is, life will never stop throwing things at you. You will always have to face delays, betrayals, disappointments, and unexpected turns. But once you stop wasting your strength on the things you can't control, you start to build unshakable resilience. You become lighter, faster, clearer. You respond instead of react. And that's when you start to realize that the world doesn't have as much power over you as you thought. You were just handing it over all along. Because the real attack in life isn't the storm outside. It's the storm you create inside by resisting what's already here. And when you learn to stop fighting what you can't control, you don't just survive life's attacks. You start winning in a way that's invisible to most people. You're calm, you're grounded, you're unmovable, and that's a kind of strength no one can take from you. When life comes after you, it's easy to slip into the mindset that you're under attack in some unfair, senseless way. Something goes wrong, and your first thought is, why is this happening to me? That's the natural response, but it's also the one that keeps you stuck. The Stoic shift happens when you stop seeing these moments as personal punishments and start seeing them as purposeful training. Every obstacle, every failure, every moment of discomfort is not just some random misfortune, it's preparation. Life isn't singling you out to destroy you, it's shaping you for something greater. I can remember times in my life when I thought I was being buried alive by problems. Jobs lost, relationships falling apart, health scares, plans collapsing overnight, and at the time all I wanted was for it to stop. But looking back, those were the exact moments that built the muscle I needed for everything that came after. It's never in the easy seasons that we develop our real strength. It's in the moments that push us to the edge, that demand more from us than we think we have to give, that we discover what we're truly capable of. The Stoics would look at hardship and ask, what is this moment here to teach me? Not a how do I get rid of it, but a what can I learn from it? That's the reframing. It's not denial. It's not pretending the pain isn't real. It's taking control of the meaning you assign to it, because the truth is the same event that breaks one person can build another. It's not the event itself, it's how you frame it in your mind. When you see life's attacks as training, you start to approach them differently. You stop asking for the storm to go away and start asking yourself, how can I stand stronger in it? You stop resenting the weight and start realizing it's what's making you stronger. Imagine you're in a gym. If you only lift the lightest weights, you'll never get stronger. It's the heavy ones that tear your muscles so they can rebuild, bigger and more capable than before. Life works the same way. The heavier the moment, the more potential it has to grow you, if you're willing to let it. I've had conversations with people who've gone through things I can barely imagine. Loss, tragedy, complete upheaval of everything they knew. And the ones who came out stronger didn't just to survive it. They made a conscious decision to use it. They didn't waste energy asking why life was unfair. They poured their energy into making sure the pain served a purpose. And that's the secret. Pain without purpose is just suffering, but pain with purpose is transformation. Reframing the attack doesn't mean you have to like what's happening. You don't have to smile through betrayal or pretend loss doesn't hurt. What it means is that you take ownership of your perspective. You decide that this moment, no matter how brutal, will be the exact thing that sharpens you, the thing that prepares you for the next chapter of your life. That's not toxic positivity, that's strategic resilience. One of the most powerful ways to do this is to ask yourself, if I were to look back on this 5 years from now, how would I want to remember my response? That question instantly shifts your focus from what's happening to who you're becoming because of it. You start to realize that you have the power to turn this moment into a defining story. Not one of defeat, but of strength. I've learned that the people who seem unshakable aren't the ones who've had it easy. They're the ones who've been through the fire and refused to walk out empty-handed. They walked out with lessons, with grit, with self-respect. And that doesn't happen by accident. It happens when you decide that every attack is an invitation to become more than you were before. The Stoics believed that life was the ultimate teacher, and that every challenge was a class in disguise. The curriculum might not be one you signed up for, but if you pay attention, it's always exactly what you need. You don't have to like the class, but you do have to take the test. And when you pass it, you come out stronger, wiser, and more prepared for whatever's next. So when the next attack comes, and it will, stop asking, why me? Start asking, what now? What's the lesson? What's the muscle being built here? What's the skill, the strength, the wisdom this is trying to give me? And once you start seeing every hardship through that lens, life stops feeling like it's happening to you and starts feeling like it's happening for you. Because here's the truth, no one gets through life without being tested. The difference between the people who grow and the people who break isn't luck. It's framing. You can call it punishment, or you can call it preparation. You can see it as the end, or you can see it as the training ground for your next beginning. The moment you choose the second option, you take back control. And that control is where calm is born, even in the middle of the worst storm. Most people don't realize how much of their suffering comes not from what happens, but from how quickly they react to it. Something goes wrong, and they immediately fire off a response, an angry text, a panic decision, a defensive comment. They move so fast from event to emotion to action that there's no space for thought, no room for clarity. And in that split second of rushing to react, they hand over their power. The Stoics understood something different. They knew that the real strength in life is found in the pause, the space between stimulus and response. That pause isn't weakness. It's not hesitation. It's control. When you stop for even a moment before responding, you give yourself the gift of perspective. You create a small gap where your higher self can step in, instead of letting your emotions run the show. That gap can be as short as a breath, but in that breath you can decide, do I want to add to the chaos or bring the calm? I've learned the hard way that reacting without thinking almost always makes the situation worse. There have been moments in my life when I said something in anger that I couldn't take back. Moments when I rushed into a decision because I felt pressured, only to regret it hours later. The instant reaction felt right in the heat of the moment, but when the dust settled, I could see it was my lack of pause that cost me. The Stoics would tell you that your first impulse is almost always the least wise one, because it's coming from a place of raw emotion rather than grounded judgment. It's easy to justify reacting quickly by saying, I'm just being honest, or that's how I felt in the moment. But honesty without restraint is often just emotional dumping. Your feelings are valid, but not every feeling needs to be acted on immediately. The pause gives you time to separate your emotions from your actions. It lets you ask, what outcome do I want here? Instead of how can I unload how I feel right now? The pause is also where your power to choose begins. In that moment, you can decide if you're going to escalate the conflict or diffuse it. You can choose whether to see the insult as an attack worth answering or as noise not worth your energy. You can choose whether to take that fear you feel and act from it, or to breathe through it until it loses its grip on you. That's the beauty of the gap. It's the place where your emotions can be acknowledged but not allowed to control you. One of the best ways to train this skill is to literally practice delaying your reaction in small, everyday situations. Someone cuts you off in traffic. Instead of laying on the horn, take a deep breath and keep driving. A coworker sends a snarky email. Wait an hour before responding. Your child spills juice all over the floor. Count to 5 before you say a word. These aren't just little acts of patience. They're training sessions for your mind. You're teaching yourself that you don't have to obey your first impulse. This discipline becomes a shield in bigger, more critical moments. When life hits you with bad news, when someone you care about disappoints you, when you feel blindsided, the person who can pause before they speak or act is the person who stays in control. They're not denying how they feel. They're simply refusing to let those feelings dictate their choices. That's the difference between reacting and responding. Reaction is fast, emotional, and often regrettable. Response is measured, intentional, and almost always more effective. The pause also gives you a chance to see the situation for what it really is. In the rush of immediate reaction, everything feels bigger and worse than it often is. But if you can take a moment, you might realize that the thing that felt like a personal attack was just someone else having a bad day. You might see that the problem isn't as urgent as your emotions are making it seem. You might even find that doing nothing at all is the smartest move. I remember once getting an email that I thought was deeply unfair. My first instinct was to type a long, pointed reply to defend myself. But I waited until the next morning to send it, and by the time morning came, I didn't even want to send it. My perspective had shifted overnight. What I thought was an emergency to address was just my ego wanting to be heard. That's the kind of clarity the pause can give you, the kind you can't see in the heat of the moment. The world we live in moves fast, and it rewards speed, instant replies, instant decisions, instant reaction. But when it comes to protecting your peace and making wise choices, speed is rarely your friend. The Stoics knew that true strength is the ability to slow down when everything around you is trying to speed you up. They understood that the person who can control themselves in the heat of the moment will always have an advantage over the person who can't. So the next time life hits you, Whether it's with an insult, a challenge, or an unexpected twist, don't rush to swing back. Stand still for a moment. Breathe. Let the emotion wash over you without pulling you under. In that gap, you'll find a strength you didn't know you had. From that place of calm, you can choose the response that keeps you in control, no matter how hard life tries to knock you off balance. One of the greatest traps we fall into is tying our peace to outcome. We convince ourselves that we'll feel calm once we get the job, once the deal closes, once they finally apologize, once life works out the way we think it should. But the Stoics would tell you that the moment you hinge your peace on something outside your control, you've given away the keys to your own mind. Outcomes are unpredictable. You can pour everything you have into a plan and still watch it collapse. You can do your best in a relationship and still have it end. You can work harder than anyone else and still see someone else get the recognition. That's life. And if your emotional state is chained to those results, you're always at the mercy of circumstances. I've lived this mistake. I've poured myself into projects believing that when they succeeded, I'd finally feel complete, only to discover that even when they did succeed, the feeling didn't last. And when they failed, I was crushed, not because I hadn't worked hard enough, but because I'd made the outcome the measure of my worth. It took me years to realize that the only part I truly own is the effort I put in, not the result that comes out. That's the shift the Stoics mastered. They focused on the process, not the prize. When you detach from outcomes, it doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you care differently. You still aim high, you still put in the work, but your sense of calm doesn't get yanked around every time things don't go exactly your way. You stop asking, "Did I win?" and start asking, "Did I do my best?" That's something you can control every single day, no matter what's going on around you. There's a freedom that comes with this mindset because it releases you from the emotional roller coaster of success and failure. If you've ever had a big goal, you know the pattern. You obsess over it. You work for it. You finally get it. And for a little while, you feel incredible. But then that high fades, and you're left needing the next win just to feel okay again. It's exhausting. But when your satisfaction comes from knowing you acted with integrity, discipline, and effort, regardless of how the world responds, you're no longer chasing that high. You carry your calm with you, instead of constantly trying to find it in something outside yourself. The Stoics understood that life will always be uncertain. You can make the perfect move and still lose. You can do everything aright and still get blindsided. But if your peace is tied to the quality of your actions instead of the outcome, no loss can take it away. The win isn't in the result. It's in the fact that you showed up with everything you had, even when the odds weren't in your favor. There's a kind of unshakable power in that. When your sense of worth isn't up for grabs every time things go wrong, you become harder to rattle. You stop overreacting when life doesn't give you what you wanted. You stop riding the highs and crashing with the low. You start to move through life with a steady kind of strength, the kind that can't be bought, broken, or taken away. I remember hearing a story about an athlete who trained for years for a single race. The day came, and conditions were terrible. Wind, rain, everything working against him. He didn't win, but when asked how he felt, he said, "I ran the best race I could in the conditions I had. That's a victory to me." That's the essence of detaching from outcomes. You measure yourself by the quality of your effort, not by the scoreboard someone else keeps. This doesn't just apply to big moments. It's something you can live out every day. Maybe you're in a conversation that matters to you, and you say what's in your heart as clearly and kindly as you can. The other person might not respond the way you hope, but your victory is in speaking your truth with grace. Or maybe you're working on a dream that's years in the making, and the progress is slow. You can choose to see each day you show up as a win, even if the finish line feels far away. When you detach from outcomes, you also start to play a longer game. You're no longer looking for instant gratification or validation. You're not desperate to see results overnight because you trust the process. You know that some seeds take time to grow and some never sprout at all, and either way, the act of planting them with intention is its own reward. The irony is when you stop obsessing over outcomes, you often perform better. Without the weight of desperation, you can think more clearly, act more decisively, and adapt more easily. You're not paralyzed by fear of failure because you're not defining yourself by whether you fail or succeed. You're defining yourself by how you show up day in and day out. Life will never stop testing you. There will always be outcomes you can't control. Promotions that go to someone else, relationships that don't work out, plans that fall apart. But when you've built your peace on the one thing you can always control, your own actions, those moments don't have the power to destroy you. You walk through them knowing that you gave your best, and that's enough. And in a world where so much is uncertain, that kind of certainty is worth more than anything you could win. Most people wait until they're in the middle of a crisis to start building mental strength. They try to scramble for calm when the storm has already surrounded them, like someone trying to learn how to swim while they're drowning. The Stoics knew better. They prepared for the storm before it came. They treated mental fortitude like a daily workout, something you train long before you need it. So when the unexpected hits, you're not just reacting, you're ready. Life isn't a question of if challenges will come, it's a matter of, and if you're not prepared, those moments will knock you flat. You can't build a strong mind in the middle of chaos any more than you can build a roof in the middle of a hurricane. Preparation happens in the quiet, in the small, ordinary moments where no one is watching. That's where the real work is done. Mental fortitude starts with habits, small, consistent practices that strengthen you a little each day. It could be journaling to get your thoughts out before they turn into anxiety. It could be meditating for a few minutes each morning to train your focus. It could be challenging yourself to step outside your comfort zone regularly so discomfort becomes familiar instead of frightening. These are not dramatic, Instagram-worthy acts of resilience. They're simple disciplines that add up, and the compound interest on them is a mind that can stay steady when life shakes. I've been through seasons where I didn't prepare, where I coasted because things felt good. And when the hard times came, I had nothing in place to hold me together. I was like a house with no foundation, one hit and everything collapsed. But I've also lived the other side. I've gone into seasons of difficulty after months or years of steady, quiet work on myself, and the difference is night and day. The problems didn't get easier, but I got stronger. I didn't fall apart, I adapted. And that's the goal, not to avoid difficulty, but to meet it with the strength you've already built. The Stoics practiced something called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evil. They would deliberately think about what could go wrong, not to scare themselves, but to prepare themselves. They would imagine loss, hardship, even death, so that when those moments eventually arrived, they wouldn't be blindsided. Most people avoid these thoughts because they're uncomfortable, but the Stoics embraced them because they knew reality doesn't care if you're uncomfortable. Preparation isn't about being pessimistic, it's about being ready. Daily preparation also means training your mind to handle stress before the stakes are high. That's why some people practice deliberate discomfort, taking cold showers, fasting, intense workouts, public speaking. It's not about the act itself. It's about teaching your mind that discomfort doesn't have to equal panic. If you can learn to stay calm when the water's freezing or your heart's racing, you're training yourself to stay calm when life hands you something far bigger. And let's be honest, most of the stress we face isn't from rare disasters. It's from the constant, everyday challenges that chip away at us. A kid, the difficult coworker, the bills piling up, the uncertainty about the future. If you can train your mind to stay centered in the small storms, you'll be far better equipped for the big one. Preparation also means building an internal code, knowing your values so deeply that they guide you automatically when things get tough. If you know exactly what you stand for, you won't waste time debating how to act when pressure hits. You'll already have decided. That clarity is part of mental fortitude, because indecision is one of the biggest drains on your energy in hard times. I can't count the number of times I've been grateful for the preparation I put in during calmer seasons. Those daily practices, getting up early, moving my body, reflecting, breathing through frustration, they seemed small in the moment. But when life hit me hard, those habits became my anchors. They gave me something to hold on to when everything else felt uncertain. They reminded me that no matter how chaotic the outside world gets, I always have control over how I show up. And here's the thing, preparation isn't glamorous. No one's applauding you for keeping a daily gratitude list or for sitting in silence for 10 minutes a day. But the reward comes later when life tries to throw you off balance and you realize you're still standing. That's the quiet payoff of consistent preparation, the ability to walk through chaos without losing yourself. The truth is, you can't control the timing of life's attacks, but you can control whether or not you're ready for them. The choice is yours every single day. Every morning you wake up, you're either building your resilience or letting it weaken. Every time you choose discipline over comfort, you're investing in the version of yourself that will face tomorrow's challenges. Every time you skip the work, you're leaving your future self exposed. So don't wait for life to test you before you decide to get strong. Build yourself now while things are steady. Sharpen your mind when you don't need it so it's ready when you do. That way, when the storm comes, and it will, you won't be scrambling to survive. You'll be ready to stand tall in the middle of it, calm, clear, and unshakable. Pain is something we all try to avoid. But no matter how hard you run from it, life will find ways to put it in your path. And when it does, you have two choices. You can let it break you, or you can let it build you. The Stoics believed that pain wasn't just an obstacle, it was an opportunity. Not in some sugar-coated, a look on the bright side way, but in the deepest, most practical sense. Pain is raw energy. If you channel it, it can fuel your growth. If you ignore it or resent it, it can rot you from the inside. I've lived both sides of that equation. There have been moments in my life when I let pain swallow me whole. I fought against it, denied it, wished it away, and in that fight, I lost myself. But I've also had moments when I faced it head on, when I asked myself, if this is here, what can I do with it? Those were the times when I walked out stronger. The pain didn't disappear, but it transformed into something I could use. That's what turning pain into purpose is all about, making it serve you instead of destroy you. We've all met people who've been through unimaginable things, yet carry themselves with grace and strength. They're not strong because life was kind to them. They're strong because they refused to waste their suffering. They learned from it, built on it, used it to help others. They didn't let it define them as victims. They used it to define themselves as survivors, as leaders, as examples of what's possible when you refuse to be broken. The Stoics had a way of stripping pain down to its core. They didn't romanticize it, but they didn't run from it either. They saw it as part of the human experience, something inevitable, something worth respecting. They believe that suffering is wasted unless it changes you for the better. If you're going to go through hell, you might as well come out with something to show for it. Wisdom, strength, clarity, compassion, turning pain into purpose often starts with accept, not the passive kind where you throw your hands up and say, it is what it is, but the active kind where you say, this is happening, and I will decide what it means for me. That shift in ownership is everything. It's the difference between life pushing you around and you taking the wheel back, even in the worst conditions. I've seen this play out in my own life. Times when I felt betrayed taught me the value of boundaries. Times when I failed publicly taught me resilience and humility. Times when I lost someone I loved taught me the urgency of living fully while we still can. None of those lessons erased the pain, but they gave it meaning. And meaning is what allows us to carry pain without letting it crush us. One of the most powerful things you can do with pain is to use it to serve others. When you share what you've been through, honestly, without trying to make it prettier than it was, you give other people hope. You remind them they're not alone. You give them a map for surviving something they might not know how to handle. That's purpose. It's why some of the most inspiring leaders, artists, and change makers are people who've suffered deeply. They didn't just heal for themselves. They turned their healing into a gift for others. And here's the truth. Pain will change you whether you want it to or not. The only choice you have is how. Will it make you bitter, or will it make you better? Will it close you off, or will it open you up? Will it leave you broken, or will it make you unbreakable? The Stoics chose to let it sharpen them. They saw every hardship as a chance to grow into someone stronger, wiser, more disciplined. Sometimes that growth is quiet. You might not see it while you're in the middle of the hurt. It's only later, when you face something new, that you realize the pain you went through prepared you for this moment. That's why the Stoics didn't waste time wishing for a life without pain. They knew that without it, there's no depth, no strength, no real understanding of what matters. So when pain comes, and it will, let it teach you. Let it strip away what's unnecessary. Let it reveal what you truly value. Let it build the patience you didn't know you had. Let it grow the courage you didn't think was in you. And when you've taken everything you can from it, don't let it just sit there. Put it to work. Use it to fuel your dreams, to deepen your relationships, to create something that will outlast you. Because the truth is, the most powerful people you'll ever meet aren't the ones who've avoided pain. They're the ones who've mastered it. They've learned to turn life's hardest hits into the very thing that drives them forward. And if you can do that, if you can take what was meant to break you and turn it into the reason you rise, then life can throw its worst at you, and you'll still find a way to stand taller than before. Then remember this, life will not spare you, but it will shape you. And if you meet it with courage, discipline, and virtue, no pain will ever have the power to defeat you.